Good, Bad, or Bullshit, episode 250, boys. I believe it's 250. Begins. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Put this in here.
I'm waiting.
Good, Bad, or Bullshit, episode 250 begins in 3, 2.
Good evening and welcome to the Good, Bad, or Bullshit podcast. Here we discuss random topics, well, usually random. Then we have an unrehearsed conversation about that topic and provide a quality review. My name is Mike Hodgins. I'm one of your three hosts on this show, along with Crofton Steers. Hello, Crofton.
Hello, Michael. Hello, listeners.
And Mr. Beau Schwartz. Hello, Beau.
Hello, Michael. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Apparently, I'm very jazzed up, as we were talking about before the show. But I have not consumed any caffeine. No, I did eat almost an entire apple crisp, so that's probably what it was. Like my mom made this. Like,
are you high on sugar right now?
She must be high on sugar. My mom made this apple crisp, and for some reason that I can't understand, my wife and son both don't really like it, and I'm like, what don't you like about this thing? It's got this delicious like crumbly stuff on the top that's like sweet and good, and these yummy baked apples. Like, what is the problem here? But they never eat it, so my mom will bring an apple crisp, and I'm like, well, I guess I have to eat the whole thing because no one else is.
I would enjoy the idea that, you know, your wife wouldn't want her mother-in-law to know that she didn't enjoy the apple crisp, but yet your mother-in-law is your mother, in supporting her son, listens to every episode of Good, Bad, or Bullshit diligently. and
it does not.
and hears this, and then at the next family dinner, of which there probably isn't because of COVID, says, oh, so I hear you're not a big fan of the apple crisp, Andrea. I heard on the latest podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could happen, but it's, I don't know. I always ask him, like, why don't you like the apple crisp? She's like, and she kind of shrug, and I'm like, all right. But the thing is, I like the apple crisp, so I'm not about to tell my mom, like, look, I'm the only one eating it here.
Oh, yeah, because that's, yeah. Well, is it?
Did they have ice cream with it?
I specifically didn't have ice cream because I was like, if I was going to put the ice cream on, then that would be overkill. Like, keep in mind, I ate 3 portions of this apple crisp. If I put ice cream with them, it'd be like, okay, I'd be blowing my calorie load for sure.
Well,
go ahead, Beau. Sorry.
I have a confession to make too. I'm just eager to share it as well on the subject of sugar, because as you guys know, I've been watching my diet, cutting down my sugar, not drinking pop. I had a moment of weakness when I went to the Shoppers last weekend, and I bought some food and all that, and then I wanted something snacky, but I'm like, I can't eat anything. And I said, you know what? I'll take this bread and I'll spread some Nutella on it. So I bought myself a jar of Nutella, and I'm like, it's a nice, some bread and some Nutella. It's a nice little thing. I like Nutella a lot, right? I'll be good this time. The jar of Nutella was gone in 24 hours. Like, the next day it was empty, and I had assaulted it with the spoon, and I knew I just can't control myself. So I had so much sugar that I think the whole weekend I was like, oh, I'm crashing. Like, it was so bad. Was
it the little jar or the big
it was
jar?
the regular bigger jar. It was not a small jar. It was
yeah.
It goes quick when you eat it by the spoonful. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I bet. Well, hey, look, we all are allowed to go off the rails.
It's
now
okay.
And then,
it's okay. It was one time. I'll live, but I'm not. It's bad. It's still on the ban list for a reason.
It is funny, though, that Nutella was your poison of choice to go off the wagon. Like, I feels like...
Well, it's because it's misleading. Like, I can spread it on bread. This time I'll be disciplined. I've been good these past few months. Let's see if I can, let's see how well I actually can behave now around a temptation. Like, no.
Well, how do you know, Beau? Because you have been good. The Rock, who is built somewhat like me, has these epic cheat days where he puts these photos of his cheat day, and they're just ridiculous. And he has these crazy things or whatever, well worse than your jar of Nutella. And he still looks like The Rock. So You know, I think that you're still well on track. 1 jar of Nutella is not.
I mean, it's also unhealthy, but I'm just trying to reduce the amount of sugar intake so I can get to bed on time. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, reducing is the key thing. You know, I try to do things in small portions when you can, like just get like a teeny little chocolate thing or whatever, you know, stuff like that.
But sometimes you just got to go hog wild on that apple crisp. You got to be like,
you got to eat a whole apple crisp. I was telling it because I often will say to my mom, like, again, Andrea is often, after we'll eat dinner, she'll be like, you know, say, I don't know, we have a pie or something. She's like, oh, I'm too full. I'm like, too full. And I'm like, I just ate a whole meal. And I'm like, I could eat this entire pie right now. Like, and I am also somewhat full because I just like eating the pie. And today I was like, you know how I always say I ate the whole pie? Like, look, I pretty much ate that entire apple crisp. So.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure some of Mrs. H's apple crisp, and it is damn good. I would obviously have it heated up with vanilla ice cream, but whatever.
It's the best with ice cream.
Yeah. Anyway,
by the way, shout out again. 2 episodes in a row to Mike's set designer for the awesome and mysterious setting that you've concocted for yourself. This is great. This is perfect.
I could be anywhere right now. Anywhere
I feel picked on.
Well, you are, because you don't have anything special going on except that bungee shirt, I think. But
I can see there is a random wire hanging off of something in the background, and the back of
it's the overhead lights.
Yeah, I think I can see a portion of the soiled mattress, or has it been moved to a different location?
No, mattress is still there with those boxes.
Oh my god, that's the soiled mattress is still there?
Well, it's not soiled. It's a good mattress.
It's soiled. We saw you hump it the last time.
I can't.
That was the old one.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's not the same mattress, I don't think. This is a different mattress. Also, I would like to point out this isn't great for our audio listeners because they're not appreciating this well-organized basement.
Boxes, hanging wires, and a mattress against a wall.
I know.
It's like...
You can pretty much look at a screen capture and you're good, though. You don't have to watch the whole video.
It would be great to take a picture of this and put it on, like, you know, Country Life magazine, like, cover or something like that. New decorating trend.
It makes me mad that Beau's background is so much nicer than mine.
I mean, I've been working on mine, though. I got my bookshelf there. Like, all you got to do is put your bookshelf. Don't you have a bookshelf down there? It's just not angled towards where you are.
It also looks like shit. Anyway.
I've been working on mine. As you can see, I got my art, my lava lamp, and everything else.
You could also just immerse yourself in darkness so that no one has to see the disarray around you.
Well, actually, on Teams, which is what I use for work calls, like I would rotate through all the fake backgrounds and stuff. But now the one that I've settled on is blurred, which is essentially you're focused and everything behind you is blurred, and it works perfectly. Like, it's good. It's understated, draws attention where it should be. Bam. You know, like is.
Why don't you put one on now for our video
because
watchers?
We're on Discord. I don't know how to do that.
Oh yeah, that's a Zoom thing.
Discord.
All right.
So guys, we should go into the topic because it's my topic this week, and I got a good one.
Yeah, all right, go. Let us have it. Bird?
The bird has to deliver it to, even though it's in my brain. I would like a bird to ceremoniously deliver it to me. That's
shit. Yep, we're working on that one.
I mean, it's regal as fun. You know, like,
make sure to take a good look at the bird so that you can tell us what
the bird is on the way. I see him in the air. There he comes. There he comes.
What kind of bird is it?
There, it's flying. It's dropping the letter. Catch it. Good catch, Crofton.
Warbler.
Well done. All right, and he's
Was
gone.
it a juvenile?
Let's see. I thought about this topic weeks ago, and I'm so proud of it. But at the same time, I'm sure I'm going to read it, and one of you guys are going to be like, "We already did that," and I'm like, "Oh, jeez." And then
I'm ready for it.
I will have no backup. You know, I'll be like, "Oh God." All right. So the topic today is Google.
Google.
Yes.
All right.
I don't think we have done it.
No, we have.
Is this the first company we've ever done as a?
No, we did Amazon.
We did.
And we did. Did we did social media, and in retrospect, I wish we had just done Facebook, because though, you know.
Well, yeah, but Google does a lot more than social media. Google does almost everything. They're like General Electric of computers at this point. Like, you
internet
know,
and
they have
data
Gmail.
stealing.
They have their internet service provider. They tried to release a game console. They tried to do a social media site, the G Plus deal. What else? They've got like a online drive with their own version of the Microsoft Office suite on there. Like, they have a lot of stuff.
So allow me to do a little intro for our good friends at Google, because we've also done big data and stuff, which I think Google obviously plays a huge part in. But let's go back to the good old times of 2004. Crofton was just finishing up university, and we were, you know, having computers in classrooms, which was somewhat unusual. Like, I had a laptop that's battery managed to last through one class and a bit. So I had really good notes for one class and a bit, but then my notes turned to shit for the rest. So I had to determine which classes got that. At that time, the internet was like, you know, it was picking up big steam, and people were still using different web browsers. Like, really, they were like Microsoft what was the precursor to Bing? Like, Netscape had faded at this point, but there were other ones, but Google was the one the cool kids used. Like, it was starting to become a thing. People were like, oh, you got to use Google or whatever. Google was becoming more and more popular. And for a while there, Google was essentially innovation incarnate. They had a new thing all the time. They were pushing the envelope forward. Around the time the Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson movie came out, where they become interns at Google, like, it's clearly Google, like, everything is, the font is Google or whatever. And the idea at that point was Google was hot shit. It was the center of tech. It was the center of the universe in terms of innovation. And now, like, where we are today, like, Google, as Beau says, have their fingers in everything, like everything. The bread and butter that is still their is the search and all the data that they have gleaned from it. They've had their fair share of failures as well, but they just keep pumping out stuff, and to the point that they are now a monolith, like a tech monolith. And now they're not the cool kid anymore. They are, you could argue, somewhat scary, and that's why I think that they're really interesting, because I've had
cell phone manufacturer too.
Pardon me?
There's cell phone manufacturer too, and
yes, you could make
Google Android. Yeah,
you can make a list as long as your arm about all the things that they do now. Most of which are tech related, but I will just say, for me, one of the reasons I find this topic interesting is because my feelings about Google as a company have fluctuated so much over time, and I'm still not 100% sure what they are today. So anyway, I'm going to ask you guys straight up: do you use Google?
Yes. Like, of course.
Okay, I didn't know if Beau was going to elaborate. Yes, I do use Google. In fact, like, Google, I would say, is the big tech company that has me most by the balls, so to speak. I've managed to extricate myself from all the other big players. Facebook is the other, like, giant one at this point. Any of the social media platforms, I'm off all of them. But Google, and I know, is fraught with problems, much the same as a lot of the rest of them, but I do use it. I use Google Drive, which I like. And yeah, so that's a short answer.
Does Google just, like, and honestly, I don't remember off the top of my head, do they own YouTube? Am I wrong on that?
No, they're YouTube.
Yeah, they own YouTube too, right? Yeah. So
I did a quick search. I know you hate when I do this. But
no,
I did a quick search just to see, like, there's no convenient list of everything Google does, although, like, on the Wikipedia page it lists a lot. But I also found out this other fact that is interesting. They own 237 subsidiary companies as well. And remember, Google is now run by Alphabet, like the actual.
Yeah, their name is the Alphabet Company. Now, it's true. I'm just remembering that as you say it, but it's definitely, like, yeah, they have I'm sure they're just huge now, and it's probably difficult to measure in any capacity.
Oh, also, our podcast is hosted on FeedBurner, not hosted, but that's our statistics tracker, which is run by Google.
Yeah, and Google
It's a Google
Analytics.
service. Yeah.
And now Google, Mike mentioned Drive and all the, Google Docs and Google Sheets and all of that stuff that is, dug into sort of the Microsoft side of things. And I use a lot of those things too, meaning that information is available to Google. Essentially what happened to me the other day is I was on my phone and I was getting targeted ads, and it was starting to drive me crazy. Like, it was to the point where, like, I would search for something and I knew what I was looking for, and then I find it, but then it keeps giving me advertisements all the time for the very thing that I've already found.
Oh
yeah.
And purchased. Like, I don't need it anymore. And then so when
but it's an algorithm. It's just gonna keep pumping. It's like, oh, he wants that. Keep pumping at him.
So then I click X on the Google ad or the ad, and I say, why? They're like, why don't you want to see this ad anymore? And one of the options is I've already bought this, or I already have it. I'm like, yeah, I already bought this, or it's annoying, or whatever. And but then I did that. I open up another web browser, ads back. It's like, so I say get lost again. I said get lost to this same ad of this thing I already bought like 4 times. It did nothing. And so I was just like, at one point I realized, because Google autofills your searches, autofills my goddamn emails now. So like, I'm writing an email in Gmail and it knows the way that I talk. Like, this it's not autofilling my emails the same way it's autofilling my mom's emails. Like, when I start writing something, it's like, you normally say this, and I'm always fighting with it because I'm just like, screw you, Google. I'm not going to say it this way this time. And then I reword it, even though in my mind, that's probably exactly how I was going to say it. And so, like, for my web browsing, I've switched to this DuckDuckGo, which is essentially a private browser that has none of these frills or whatever. And Google Chrome, when they launched Chrome, and it was a big deal for me, I was like, oh, great. I can get away from the Microsofts and then this and that, and I'm in the Google thing, and everything about Google was clean and cool and safe and all this. And now I feel the exact opposite. I feel like it tracks, like, my phone. I'm on an Android, so everything is related to my Gmail sort of account. I log in, it's the Google Play Store, it's Google this, it's Google that. They have all this information about me, and like, crazy. Google probably has more information about me than any single company that I could possibly think of. And so so it's scary shit.
Because even as I had an Android phone too, and it would it would tell you, like, have this monthly, I think this is monthly email I get. It's like, want to see where you were in the past month, and you're like, okay, and it just shows you everywhere you went. It was like, because of the pandemic, it was just back and forth from my house, but it literally, like, it'll literally was recording my routine. And so imagine being able to record the routines of everyone to see what human endeavor's like and what you can learn from it. But anyways, yeah, they have a lot of info for sure.
And just as I was before this this very show telling Crofton and Beau, and it's trending probably right now, but to watch this, and I recommend any listeners to go watch it, The Social Dilemma on Netflix, because there's a lot of Google stuff in there too. And one of the most interesting bits about it, which Crofton touched on, when you're writing in your email and it's like finishing your sentences, it knows the way you talk. And but the other extension of that, and this is in some ways the more frightening thing about it, because again, Google, like, their main thing still is a search. Like, look, we know they do so many other things, but the search. And but your Google results are different than my Google results, are different than someone's Google results, and they can be grouped by demographic, and they know all of this stuff. And this is part of the problem that exists in social media as well, which is putting people in their Google starts to know what you like, what you search for, what your political views are, what your socioeconomic status is, all of this stuff, and is feeding you Google search results that fit your profile. And some might argue that that's actually, hey, that's great advertising. You're going to get ads that are targeted at you, that you might be something you really like. But there is obviously a huge dark side to this, which is like they can persuade you more easily to buy things that you might not need. Because, and then, that's sort of the problem with all this stuff. Google in particular is the main one because they do so many things that are like good. Like, I mean, I say use Drive. I love Drive. Drive's great. I don't have to think about, oh, I forgot my computer. Like, oh, I can open on my phone. And if I want to write some document I've been working on or whatever, I can just pick it up anywhere. Like, that's great. And it's got all the spreadsheets. It's super easy to use. I like it. But it's free, right? And you're kind of like, okay, why is it free? And we're so like, damn it, I don't want to pay for anything. And it's just given to you and it works great. Because if I want to have Microsoft Office or whatever, like, okay, well, I got to buy it and put it on my computer and I have to have my computer with me. I think that's changed. Actually, I think it's a lot more portable, cross devices than it used to be and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's free. Like, well, why wouldn't I use it? And the reason is because it's not free. What you're selling is your attention, your behavior patterns, and they make money by selling those to advertisers.
Not just your behavior patterns, but they're influencing your behavior as well.
Absolutely. And that's like, that is the tricky bit. I heard in this documentary, there's one guy called Jaron Lanier, who's like a computer scientist. He was like father of virtual reality. And he was saying, he's like, they're only modifying, this is all social media, not just Google, but Google's certainly part of it. They're modifying behavior. They're actually nudging the way you go about your business. And he's like, it might only be like 1% or something like that. And it's like, but it's all of society. 1% is like a lot. And if you can push it in the direction you want it to go, that 1% is massive. And is an interesting kind of counter to that. It's
especially if that
like climate change.
Especially that 1% is part of like an influential group.
Well, sure. You could
take celebrities and celebrities like it, then that spreads from there.
Yeah, and then just the one point about the kind of similar like impact that, again, I think this is just an apt analogy. Is it like with climate change, we're talking about like 1 degree warming or 2 degree, some small incremental amount of temperature warming, which like fucks everything up. Mm-hmm. And that's potentially the outcome of like, yeah, you're like making humans behave differently for your own purposes, which are to sell advertisements. That's what they do. That's where their money comes from. That's what are the implications of that? We don't know.
And in terms of change, like, this is the thing, in terms, like, to your point about like this affects us on a micro level in terms of behaviors and all of this, but in terms of like the larger way that Google, I think, has impacted society, I do think that their venture into maps, which I remember when everybody was on MapQuest, and this is aging me, and then all of a sudden, like, Google Maps was the shit, and they introduced Street View, and they're still introducing like map functionality. And
I love maps.
Yeah, street maps. Like, I like to pick a random spot and drop Street View down. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I know, but it's like it's crazy. Like, they drive these cars around with cameras on them, and when they're blurring their faces, but you can like.
But that was cool, right? Everyone thought that was cool.
I'm in one. My house in the Glebe. I'm walking down the street.
Great.
I don't know if they've changed it, but it was like, oh, hey, that's me.
But now it's been around so long that you can actively like go through the years on some popular places. Like, you're like, okay, let's see this year, and see like buildings go up or different. It's crazy, and in a way, it's very impressive and powerful, but in another way, it's completely shaping the way that cities are built and that things are developed, that which stores are successful. I was in 3 stores. Like, I bundle my shopping so that I don't have to do it too often. And about a month ago during my vacation, I was like in 3 stores in a week, and I got good service. And I asked them like what I could do, and they're like, "Oh, please go on Google and give us a review." And like each of the stores, like you can go on to any store and click, and it's like the average amount of stars that store gets on Google, and you can write a review. And if you write a review and you name an employee, well, that employee might get pay benefits or whatever because they were named in the Google review. The store may be successful. If it got 1 star because a bunch of people hate bombed it, it could go out of business. Like, this is just the insane power that it has. And then, of course, like Beau mentioned the tracking with the maps and all of this, but like I would say like maps as a whole, like atlases, like my parents opened when we went on a trip to Florida, are pretty much useless now because everybody is on their phone and they're all using Google Maps. The amount of data and information they must have just on that alone has got to be insane, you know, like, and I'm not sure like how much of it is usable or how much of it they can translate into things, how much of it affects decisions that are made, be it by Google or other companies. But it is frightening how much of human history, how much information, be it, you know, the photos that the cars take, be it they own, like if you're say you stream on YouTube all the time, you're writing a book on Google Drive on your in your free time, you're writing emails through your Google Gmail account, like every piece of creative endeavor that you've done, they have access to in some capacity. I don't know what the ownership is, if they're able to like take it at any point or whatever, but I just know that they definitely have me by the balls. I feel more above and beyond. Like Facebook I can take and leave. Sometimes I go on it, sometimes I don't. Twitter I can take and leave, but Google, it's everywhere. My phone, I use it constantly, and I like a lot of the services it provides, but I'm at a point where I'm feeling like, oh, like scared of it a bit, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to collect my thoughts on the subject.
It is tough because the initial thing when you say it's kind of like, what's the alternative? Like, so it's like if I want to search for something, I guess that more recently knowing the fact that the search results I get are different from other people's is kind of an interesting and weird thing to know. But at the same time, like it probably means it's effective for what I want to search for. And I often want to search for like I do a lot of like, I got a 6-year-old kid. He's like, why is this like that? What's that? You know, he's asked questions about everything, and we'll read some book, and then I'll be like, he's like, how did the Earth get formed? And I'm like, oh, it was like, you know, a star exploded. I'm just trying to explain it from memory. I'm like, yeah, let's look it up. I'm like, and then it's like, okay, and then an accretion disk formed around the nascent star and or whatever. And it's like, because I'll Google it, and it will be like,
does he ask you to Google it? Because my daughter asks me. My daughter says, can you Google it, Daddy? Because we will use it as a verb. We'll say, oh, you know, like I'll check it, I'll Google it or whatever. We'll say it. So, and now my 6-year-old daughter asks us to Google stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because it is interesting because, you know, I'll say Google in certain contexts, but I haven't meant to not say it to my son. But what I always will say is, oh, look it up, is what I say. And now I realize that I've had a major parenting win over you by no fault of my own, because I didn't mention Google. Because I certainly have used that, you know, oh, you should Google it, but I just basically say I'll look it up, which leaves it open to be like, maybe he's using Alta Vista.
Oh my God. Oh God, dude. That's a blast from the past. Oh my God.
That's what I've been thinking. He's like, maybe Daddy's using Alta Vista.
I'm still waiting for the results. Like, oh God. Like, yeah. So the thing is, like, you know, it's giving me access. You know, it's funny because we touched on this when we did a love-in for the, I think everyone can agree, the best thing on the internet, Wikipedia, which I still stand by as being like what the internet's supposed to be, like information that's constantly.
I can agree with that.
I mean, go back and visit our podcast on Wikipedia. It was a good one. I think we all agreed we liked it. I incidentally give money every year to Wikipedia. But they usually do a drive and say, you know, we're not Google. We don't do any of the shit that all these other companies do. And I'm kind of like, you know what? I love Wikipedia. Here's $20 or whatever.
Oh, the great thing about that too is you also sometimes you're like, oh, I don't use it that much, and maybe you would use it more than you realize. But you're like, I don't use it that much. I'm not giving money. But like Wikipedia, you can't deny everyone uses. At some point, you're trying to look something up, and you're going to Wikipedia for it. It's
at some point. Like I realize, and I should just think about this. Most of the things I'm looking for are actually Wikipedia, and I'm just using Google to search it on Wikipedia. I'm like, why don't I just go to Wikipedia? I mean, you know, if I'm on my computer, I'm on Chrome, So I'm like, damn it, Google.
It's because the Chrome, you just type it in the URL because you're too lazy to type out the URL, and the Google's like, sweet, we'll take your data along the way because that's how it works.
Yeah. But
that's
Chrome,
one thing. DuckDuckGo makes me work for it. Like now I'm used to that autofill. It's like, oh, it doesn't autofill.
But like you see, like business on the internet, like part of the way business is conducted on the internet is like we give you the service for free, but we give you the crap version, and then you pay for it. And like anything that has that equation is profitable, even if it doesn't generate money. So like the fact that like I will do too, I'll type Wikipedia in and not put the .com and then press enter, and then go to Google, then click on it to go to. It's a great observation, Mike, because I do that all the time, and it's like, why is Google getting the free traffic and whatever? And it's just like it's because they've engineered it to make it the easiest way for me to access it.
Yeah.
As subtle as it is, I don't have to type the .com in or what. I can type in like Crofton Wiki, and like I don't have to type in the whole thing, and then great, I go to Google, then I get to my Wikipedia page. They're counting on the fact that one way is more convenient than the other, and that you'll pay money in many instances for the convenience, as I pay for YouTube Premium. And by the way, YouTube Premium is the best sub of any video service because it's not TV shows bullshit. And I love TV shows too, but I've spent days and days and days watching TV. What I like about YouTube Premium, I can turn the video off, plug the headphones in, listen to a lecture, and fucking learn something for a change. It's been super refreshing.
And then you should also watch The Social Dilemma, because pretty soon you'll be like, oh,
why?
Because YouTube, it's got some bad shit going on.
Oh, for sure. But I'm listening to lectures that are like they have like 1,000 views because it's boring and not engaging, and I'm like, but it is engaging because it's neuroscience, so this is what I want.
I've listened to a lot of that too, but then occasionally I'll be like, oh, I've clicked on the recommended videos, and I guess anyone who knows don't ever click on the recommended videos. Make sure that because you're starting then down the YouTube rabbit hole. And I heard multiple people say this, where it often leads you to crazy town, like flat earth conspiracies, a lot of racist crap. And the reason it does that is not because YouTube is racist or anything like that. It's because it's like you might be no, but it's not even that. It's that they know that people stay on that stuff and it might be because you're outraged and angry, and then you click on the next thing, but it doesn't care why you're doing it. So you might be doing it because you're like in shock and horror at this thing, and then you're staying on, and that's what it's about. Keep you on, keep monitoring what you're doing, and YouTube does this a lot. So YouTube is one of I was going to say I use YouTube a fair amount too, and I try to make sure that I search the thing and I watch that video, and then I try to go to the next one, but I've definitely watched a whole bunch of random recommended stuff, and I just feel like their algorithm's working my brain right now.
I think going back to a question that Mike asked, which was, what's the alternative? Like, what would I want to see? Because you're right, I love a lot of the things that Google provides. Like a lot of the services, I'm not a big YouTube user, but when I do use it, I like that it's there. I like a lot of the things. I'm so into Google services that I obviously like them often more than competing alternatives. But it's at a point now where like one company just has so much, and I would like it. Like Mike mentioned Wikipedia. Well, let's say Wikipedia had not existed, and let's say in an alternate world, Google made Wikipedia. Or in a world in the near future, Google buys Wikipedia, in some capacity. And so like, does that mean Wikipedia is suddenly shit? No, it doesn't. But it means that all of a sudden, this is another thing that they got. So what is my preferred alternative? Well, it would be if this crazy, if one company controls all this stuff or has access to all this stuff, I would prefer like there be an amazing map company, an amazing email company, an amazing search company, an amazing video company, like before YouTube was bought. Like if all of those guys were independent, well, at least I could feel like, yeah, they've got me by different parts of my balls, but not both balls. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what I feel like they've got me by right now.
Yeah, it's tough because I think that the problem is that those things don't exist, or they don't exist in the same again, quality, like the unfortunate, it's sad to say this is unfortunate, but the Google does what they do well because like they hire super smart people to design these things, and they design them very well. Like I always think of when I was in like, for example, so I work in the government, and so then someone will be like, "Oh, can you look something up on our government website?" And you'll use the search, and it's almost a joke to call it a search function that the website of some government department has, and you'll type it in, and it'll provide you with like 15,000 results, all of which are like complete garbage. I'm like, I can't. I'm like, ugh. The first results are nowhere even close to what I want, and you'll go down and be like, you have to scroll through hundreds of pages. And it's like, I'm glad you're laughing because it's
no, I laugh because I know like these government searches, like for internal departments, which we work for, are almost made in such a comical way that it's like, they're like, okay, somebody puts in a search term and let's like find, like, it's like a reverse Google. They'll be like, okay, this is the
like
most
jumble the letters up.
Jumble it up. It's like, I'm like, I don't even know where I am right now.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I'm like, it gives me some result. I'm like, what is this? And then so I will use Google to game that system, where Google's so good that I can be like, okay, Google, what is, I don't know what the thing is. You can put like colon, and then I can make it search the government website that I wanted to do, and then put in quotes the words and things I wanted to find, and then right away I get what I want. And I'm like, God damn it! Well, it works well, you know. And again, this is the other side of the argument that like it's the best search engine. Like it has problems, and the main problem is the problem all these social media companies have, and big tech companies, is their monetization. That's the big problem, because no one's paying for this service, so they have to make money, and they make a ton of it, and they do it by, oh, hey, you're giving us all this data. We know exactly who you are and how to feed you ads. And people will pay a lot of money for ads that are highly targeted. That's the money ads. So like that's how they make their money. And you're like, well, you know, they couldn't be doing all this without money.
All right, sorry to make it. Sorry to interrupt, but we've given a lot of space, and we probably will continue to do so. On the, you know, they got all our data. They're everywhere. They know what we do. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. We're all negative.
I just said they did the best.
Mike
searches.
wasn't negative.
No,
I just said they had the best.
I know. Whoa. Okay. Sorry. Just so jumpy today, guys.
No, it's okay. You're not listening.
No. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
You gave them praise. I gave them praise, but mostly this is skewed kind of negative. Not that all of our comments are negative, but just in general, it's very much that they're like a boogeyman of some kind, or that there's a lot of dangers in there, and they're being very irresponsible. What I want to do is I kind of want to shift it, because I have a different perspective, or it's an open question in my mind. I don't have this opinion, but I look at all that we said, and maybe, just maybe, we're being a little reticent with all of this stuff because it's scary, and because we are changing as a result, and there are aspects to this that's really unhealthy. But overall, that they collect our data, they make our lives a lot better. Like overall, like maybe this is like, you know, going to be a pathway to the future of what we look like, in the sense that we're using Google, problems are arising with, you know, being manipulated and all that stuff. But I don't know if you said it on the show or if it was before the show, but it's just like, I don't want to have a cell phone. I don't want them to know all about my lives. Get rid of your social media accounts. You know, it's causing all these problems in society. And, you know, Google is definitely a big participant in that. What if that's like growing pains till we get to this place where, you know, we do have the cell phone attached to us. We have Neuralink in our brains, and we're meant to move in this direction. Good or bad, like really these things are benign. It's us that decide they're good or bad, right? So, you know, if there's a sense that as, you know, we move towards the future, we have the link, dare I bring up the hive mind again, that, you know, we should be moving in these directions. And the fact that they do manipulate us is a good thing because we're evolving as a species from, you know, this mammalian existence to something more resembling like what an insect, like an ant colony would have, where we're all connected, we're all on the same wavelength. And I'm serious. Rather than obey instructions on a,
oh, that's way better.
Rather than
ant
obey
colony.
instructions on a sign, well, the ant colony is not good or bad. We think it's bad because we're humans. But what if we could be an ant colony, but have the intelligence of human beings, because that's what we're most notable for out of all the species.
The Borg.
Well, you're assuming that that's what it's going to look like, but you don't know.
No,
I don't
one
know.
Perception of it,
right?
But it's just funny because it's like the sci-fi. The reason why most people don't like your hive mind idea and why it's portrayed often in like science fiction. Well, no, it's not only that. Well, no, not only that. Yes, that's maybe one part of it, but the fear that people really have is the fact that we value our individual thoughts, our individual agency in the world, and that's important to most people. Like, I am me. I have this one entity.
That's also a bias.
You're saying that might be bad.
That's a bias. You know, like no matter how you put it, saying like I don't want to lose my autonomy, that's good, is a bias because we're designed that way. But what if losing our autonomy was actually really awesome for us and we could travel the stars by doing so? Like,
yeah, but you might have maybe no personal experience of that. You know, so like
I don't know, but I'm not going to assume it's bad because I just don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. So yes, you're saying this could be the path towards the expansion of the human experiment.
The way I see the future with Neuralink, eventually we will no longer have human bodies. Our brains are essentially what we are. So if we can learn enough,
that's untrue. But
I think if we learn enough about the brain, we would have to engineer it and change it. We couldn't just take a brain out and expect it to function right because it's used to having the body. It's designed, you know, that way. But we're studying the brain, and what if we can make new brains that people are born with? It's hard to imagine, but why does the brain have to be designed how it is? Can we change what a brain is once we fully understand it and we start growing them and making synthetic brains, which is, I think, more likely than AI? Once we figure out how a brain works, it'll be a short jump to make one that we built on our own. And once we're able to do that, then we can build brains that people can be born to that will resemble nothing like us, and it won't be like anything we expect because we're finally able to master life in the sense that maybe not immortality, but definitely we can shape human. You know, it's almost eugenics, but not quite. Yeah.
So before like going down this rabbit hole too deep, and I understand like the connection with Google. I will just say that like what you talk a lot about the we as if all humanity is jumping and moving together when in fact Google, going back to Google, is a corporation, and I think it has, if we're talking science fiction, this has way more in line with cyberpunk and a future where some giant massive corps control everything from like, you know, information, not just information, but like your personal lives. Practically you become bottom line slaves to these corporations. I could see going down that rabbit hole with these super, like the Amazons, the Googles, the what have you. Like right now, I think we see Google collectively as like a benevolent overlord. Like we're like, well, they provide some great services and it really makes our lives easier. And yes, there's the data collection, there's the targeting ads, there's this and that. But like at any given time, like for a long time, we looked at the United States a certain way, and now we look at it perhaps in a bit of a different way. But Google is one of those things where it's like, yeah, it might lead us down. It might at one point take over everything, and we'll all become this one group, and it will lead us to the developing synthetic brains and all, you know, like that. It's, you know, nothing is impossible. I just think that more than likely it's filling the pockets of some capitalist fat cats that are getting a scary amount of control over folks, and that's what makes me uncomfortable. At the top, it's still people, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a real concern because like there's always been the rich and powerful, and they've controlled more than we thought they did. You know, like I mean, the fact that hemp is illegal and has to do with the businessman wanting hemp not to be a competition as for clothing, like as a fibrous material. I believe, like in the States, like that's why we have it today. It's from like some guy who basically made it, did a smear campaign on marijuana to, not because it was bad. It was, I think it was pulp or something. He had controlling interest in a competing thing, and he made it illegal. So they're going to have, the Google's going to have similar, you know, there's that potential is there today, or maybe is already occurring. So I'm just saying, like, that's always been true, I guess is what I'm trying to say, at least as far as capitalism's been around. So Google's nothing special here. They're just the new version of those same people from the past.
Well, you know, your question is an interesting one of like, where is this all going in terms of what's its long-term impact going to be on humanity? And Google is they're developing AIs. They're trying to. You know, there's a lot of companies in this kind of like AI race, which I think is a insane thing to be involved in. So yeah, is it going towards what you outlined or some such thing like that? Maybe, who knows? But I guess the kind of big hang up about Google and doing this kind of thing, and tech companies in general, is it first, like, they're not asking anyone if they can do or should do this. They're just doing it, right? So it's like if they can all of a sudden make like human centaurs with like computer adapted brains that outcompete all other humans, and they just do that, and a whole bunch of people are like, hey, yeah, I'm on board, I don't care. And there's a whole bunch of other people who are like, well, I don't want to be part of this. And all of a sudden you become an underclass. Centauri. Or, you know, that's actually what they call chess masters who use computer algorithms to assist them. They're called centaurs. That's where I got that from. And they're better. So yeah, this is how
keep going.
This is how AI apparently evolved, where it was like humans could beat computers at chess for a long time, and then eventually computers could beat humans at chess. Then humans working with computers could beat any computer, and now computers can beat all humans no matter what they're using. Like it's just advancing so quickly. So I may have lost my train of thought there a little bit, but the point is, we're not involved in to Crofton's point, and this is where it comes down to. This is some private company with people at the top making decisions about this stuff that, like, they're not asking me what I think. They're not asking anyone. I mean, they're just doing it. And some of it is scary and dangerous. And I know you're all in for like a hive mind, but the question is, like, do you want a Google hive mind? What if the way you say, what if the way you envision this utopia of hive mind, and I'm just saying, like, playing devil's advocate, that say what you envision is possible, this like perfect humanity of everyone knows everyone else's thoughts, and we leave our bodies. But say that's not what Google gives you, because their board decides that actually it should be in a slightly different way. There should be certain humans who are kind of like the philosopher kings of this hive mind.
Let's call them centaurs.
Yeah, whatever. And then so the point is, Beau, that even if you are like, yeah, this is maybe going in the positive direction, you're not involved in it at all. You're just a consumer, and maybe it'll be a product you like Google Drive, which is so great. Or maybe it will be a product that's not really the one you want, but they're going to be like, well, this is what it is. Get on or get left behind. And no one is involved with it. They have total rights to design anything they want, and there's no one holding anyone to account and saying, should we do this and how should we do it? They're just doing it, right?
I mean, yeah, I understand what you're saying, that you think that we're all just powerless people to a bunch of other people that are going to decide our fate with all this business, right? Like, but so, like, why am I cheerleading it on, or do I want Google to be like leading? And like the answer is, like, I kind of don't care, because if it's not Google, it's gonna be Amazon, it's gonna be Facebook, it's gonna be any number of large companies. Like, the fact that there's a large company behind it is going to be a constant here. Driving the innovation at the scale that we're working at right now. So, I mean, it can be any name, and I don't know that I like Google any more than Amazon or Facebook. And whether or not I like it, it's happening. Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone knows it's a computer now. Everyone is doing binge watching. Grandmothers are now doing this stuff. Everyone's doing it. And this is life. Like, the fact is, I think about quitting the cell phone, or I think about reducing the amount of stuff, and there is nothing in my current endeavor, and all of the people that I know, except for you, Mike, probably, that isn't where this isn't a required and understood aspect of it, and it would require such monumental effort for me to like have food and eat, and what job would I find to do that isn't like a regression that I would find that doesn't require all my participation in whatever they're up to. Like, you're right. Like, and this is where we talk about the decentralization of governments. It's going to happen at some point. The corporations will buy the governments. That's going to happen, and they'll have a different way of maintaining peace. And it might be better, it might not. But what's clear is that government cannot keep up with the pace of innovation, and the population's exploding, and like all the people in patent courts, like all those things that take years to resolve because there's so many there's just so much happening, and government is getting, like, all governments are getting blasted. They are behind, and every year they're behind, they lose 10 more years, and it grows and it grows and it grows. Yeah, the fact is, their government is going to be rendered ineffective in the next 100 years, unless the planet gets like wiped out due to climate change. And even then, companies may be better suited for climate change than a government, because governments are self-interest in their power, but a climate change is interested in profit, and people dying is not profitable. So they're more likely to fix it.
I'm like, maybe a climate change apocalypse will save us from the tech apocalypse.
I'm thinking the reverse, but okay. Yeah. But, I'm just guessing, just like everyone else, right? But to answer your original question, it's going to be one big company or another. I don't see it as unavoidable.
And that's partly why I chose Google as a topic, because Google is the one, like, I use the benevolent, excuse me, overlord. The idea that we actually, most people, even a Mike who is like just spent his pre-show bitching about the people in social media, would still get value out of Google. And this is the thing. I listened to a show about somebody who tried to quit Google entirely, and they did, they got. And it means, Beau, when you were talking about these other tech overlords, you're right. It means getting in bed with the other tech overlords. So having an iPhone, for instance, and being in bed with Apple. So like, because Android and all of that is entirely Google. So so it means doing that. It means getting something, like DuckDuckGo. It means not using YouTube. It means like there's a bunch. It means having an email account with something else. It means using like you can get off of Google. There are ways. Yes. It's just that you're in bed with all these other sort of tech.
The 256 other Fitbit is owned by them, or they own Fitbit.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like it's a huge pain in the ass. So the reason I chose Google is we've talked about the big data on this show before, and we've talked about social media on this show before. But in both cases, I thought that the conversation skewed a little negative based on the fact that we're really like the value of it. It was like, it was clear what the downside already was to these things, and we had to dig on what the value was. Yeah. Whereas with Google, the reason I brought it up, in current corporate overlords, I feel like it's the one that people have the most positive natural feelings towards. It's the one that people use a lot of their things and are like, hey, this is helpful for me. Hey, this helps my life. Hey, this does this and that. And therefore, like, people are willing to give Google a pass in a way that they wouldn't necessarily if we were having the same thing about Facebook, and it would be like the same concerns or whatever. But because it's Google, it's like, oh yeah, Google's cool. There's still people that, that remember the startup Google or whatever, and still have those positive associations. I know that I sort of still do in my brain whenever Google is about to launch something. I'm like, oh, what's Google going to do next? And so that's part of it. I think for me, it's been very difficult to like, whereas if we pull the Facebook, I could come down pretty hard on it. I don't feel I can do it the same way for Google.
Yeah, and I want to like just jump off that with a more personal take on it. Like, why am I using Google? Because I think a lot of people don't think about these things, but you know, in the past few months, I've had a lot of time to reflect on my relationship with computers and screens because I use them a lot. And I'm by no means any closer to an answer, but I do have a better understanding. And it's this. You know, in my heart of hearts, my aspiration has always been show business. Like since maybe about late teens, but I've wanted to be in the theater, wanted to make movies. You know, when we did skateboarding, I wanted to make a cool skateboarding video part. Like, I want to be on camera. I want people to see me. I want to be a center of attention. I want to sound like an expert and everyone go, So I don't get much of that on this show, but you know, I'll take what I can get. But that never really materialized for a number of reasons. I think like, you know, maybe some of the stuff I'm going through is an explanation, and I don't want to get into that. But all that to say is that computers has offered me a way to live out my dream. I'm on this show with you guys. We're doing it for 7 years, and we have some amazing people in the chat room who are, you know, watching us live, and it's making me feel good. They watch me play guitar now, which is great. I'm on Core. I'm a DM on There'll Be Dungeons, and none of this is possible without the technology of the internet and the bad stuff, the likes and the social engineering, and Twitch is driving people to us right now. And you know, Google's a part of that too. And I have to ask myself, I'm like, yeah, I want to leave, but it isn't just convenience. Like, oh, I can shop easier. They're giving me my dream. And if I turn it all off tomorrow, what am I doing? A local theater. And it's like, well, that's good too. But like, my brain is so lit up by the potential of reaching the entire world that the theater is not enticing. Making 20 people have a special moment is not enticing for me. And, you know, Google is offering me tools to do that on YouTube where we post these videos, and to host a podcast on Google Play and to reach all of these people. So I have to throw the towel in on a certain level and say, it's too much. I am in for a dime, in for a dollar. This is the direction I'm going. I can hate it and I will criticize it, and we'll talk about it a bunch. But I don't see myself completely cutting myself off of computers, as Mike suggested, which I think is a good idea. I agree with you, Mike, completely. But it won't be my destiny right now that I can see. But maybe in the future I'll change my mind. But, you know.
Yeah,
anyways,
I
what do
mean,
you think?
I don't think I wasn't saying computers. I was saying social media.
Social media, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good place to stand. And like that, you're kind of just, you're all in on this, and I feel like a little bit less you know, obviously I'm of the ones of us who's less technologically inclined, in the sense that I don't care that much about it, and I really see it simply as a tool usually. Yeah. And I find, and maybe that's the thing that for me, because you know, Crofton was saying this, and it's like Google again specifically, I have less ill will towards Google than I do to some of the other tech companies. And I think the reason for that is that I am able to treat it like a tool. So a tool, you know, sits there until you want to use it, you know, whereas Twitter is like, bang, 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 look at all these red things, or you know, like, you got to check it out. Facebook too, all these things. They're like, hey you, come back here. But Google is not. It's just sitting there, and I'm like, I want to search something, and it gives me the thing right away. It's just
Google
like,
has tried. Google has failures. Like it had a bunch of social media. Like, what was it, G Plus or whatever? They've had a bunch of starts and stops in many different areas, and it's not from lack of trying that they don't have a social media platform.
Right.
I guess one big thing that kind of begs the question, but all of this is like what's called the public good, or like the social good. Like, is it in the public good, something like Google or social media more broadly? And, you know, these are, as people point out, the biggest companies and most and richest companies that have ever existed, and most powerful because of that, and what's all implied with that. Not only in terms of money, but in terms of nudging people's opinions about things. It's like they're incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. But it's not the first not totally unprecedented. You know, at the very start of the 19th century, the end of the 18th century was called the Gilded Age, in which, you know, people like Vanderbilt, Rockefeller, Carnegie, and some of these people were obscenely rich. And it was only recently that proportionally the tech companies are richer than those guys were. Like, that's how rich they were. Yeah. And they essentially functioned as monopolies, and there was a bunch of them. And at some point, it was deemed that this way of doing this business was not in the public good. And a Republican president in the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, broke them up. And that is probably what should happen to Google, and probably things like Facebook and all these other companies as well. Because again, it's like, who's deciding what the public good is? I mean, democracy is inherently flawed and problematic, but it's at least somewhat accountable to everyone. You get to vote, you get to choose who's in there. It's hugely problem. But a tech company doing something is accountable to nobody. It just does what it wants to do. And I think it's kind of like, it may be good stuff, as Beau says, maybe it will be good stuff, but we're not involved in that conversation at all. Yeah. And is it in the public good? And who decides what that public good is? I would prefer it be someone that I at least, you know, maybe it answers to Parliament in our country or some other kind of elected body than just like some billionaire, especially someone like Zuckerberg, who seems frankly like a bit of a sociopath to me, you know, who's like, I like it like this. And I'm like, I don't want fucking Zuckerberg or deciding what the future looks like in his image, because that's essentially how much power these people have. And I'm like, that frightens me. Like, why should it be him or the head of, I don't even know, I can't remember the guy is the head of Google. And that's a big problem. So I feel like the solution to this, and it's been done before, is to break these companies up. They do a lot of things and they do them well. But there should be, you know, you're right. You're really right, Beau, that government has been extremely slow to respond to this, but I think a reckoning is coming.
I don't see it coming, especially when you look when you look at the United States in its current form. But even then, like, think about the robber barons example you just gave. Like, when they were broken up, like, they were building train tracks. They were in the States. They were not an
accountable to one government. Yeah,
they were accountable to one government. Right now, Zuckerberg, like, honestly, he wants to stay in the States. You want to play ball, but whatever. If the heat's too high, I moved to some sort of island that I bought myself and keep running my thing. The internet is everywhere. It's everything. So, like, they're gonna find a place to run these things if one government cracks down on it. And of course, obviously, jobs associated to it, money, you know, in palms. People are not gonna, like, they're not gonna they're gonna do the bare minimum to keep them broken up. And I recognize that now we're spiraling bigger than Google. But Mike said one thing that resonated with me, which is that he knows Mark Zuckerberg's name, but he doesn't know the head of Google's name. And I'll be honest, I don't know off the top of my head either. And I know Tim Cook's name, who's the head of Apple. And I find that really ironic. I know Jack on the top of Twitter. I know, like, for some reason that I would not know the head of Google, the place where you would just go on Google and be like, who's top dog. He probably testified at Congress along with everyone else. And that's part of the thing, that Google has occupied this rarefied plane in a way that others haven't. They've fought their Cambridge Analytica scandals on the Facebook side, or on the Apple side, their monopolies on the App Store and all this. And meanwhile, Google is just being like smooth sailing. I'm not saying they haven't had their things, but it's definitely been, you know, more of a positive than a negative for them.
As a funny aside, did you guys hear that? Can't remember where I heard this, but you know how they used to have this slogan called "Don't be evil," and then so I was like, okay, good for them. But apparently they dropped that a few years ago, kind of quietly. It's no longer they no longer use the "Don't be evil," and I'm like, well, why would you drop that? Like, even if you were like,
oh, that was very controversial. Like, hey,
yeah, but even if they were like,
I'm not familiar. What is this?
That was part of their mission statement. Don't be evil. And then recently they were like, yeah, we removed that because it was very vague or whatever. You know, and it's like, no, it's not. No, it's not. Like,
it's so simple. But I'm just, to me, it's like, maybe it's vague, but
because what happens?
important, and they're like, you know what, fuck that. It's like,
here's a little pro wrestling tip. If you have a mantra and one of the things is like eat your vitamins, say your prayers, or whatever, and then all of a sudden you take a Sharpie and you axe one of them out, you're probably turning heel soon. So if you go over your thing, you're like, don't be evil. Do we really? It's a bit vague, don't you think? Like that means you're coming out with the chair shot next match, So
there's a lot of important wrestling lessons you can learn from wrestling. I know for sure. Thank you.
I'm wrestling with my verdict right now.
You would think though that they would be like someone in the room would have been like, it's like, hey, I'm tired of not being evil. You know what? We have a lot of power. Let's fuck everything over and get even richer. And like, time to get rid of the slogan. Would not someone else say, whisper back like, but you know what? If you want to be really evil, you leave the slogan there. And you still be evil.
Yeah, I mean, the slogan is no guarantee of innocence. That's true.
No,
but
of course not.
I mean, it's also doing it's doing no harm being there. Like it should be the. Too. Okay, just so that it.
I'm back. Is it all right?
Yeah, it seemed to stop when I muted you, Crofton. So whatever was happening, you guys heard that too, right?
No, I didn't hear it.
Yeah,
Mike, you heard it?
Okay, I heard it. I was like, oh my god! I mean,
yeah, even the chat room was like
drilling into my brain.
Michael, chat room was just like, oh my god, ah! They're all like, whoa! It was ear-shatteringly loud. You could hear it on the stream. Yeah, you'll watch it back.
Super loud and piercing and a horrible sound. Thanks, Crofton.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
actually, was just someone down at Google HQ being like, you know what? Fuck these people.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to spoil the joke now, but when you guys both say it's bad, Google's bad, I'm going to enjoy watching them ban your accounts or something like that. It's like, you think we're bad, hey? Well, why are you using our service?
I would laugh at they're like,
our algorithm just picked up the word Google and the word bad together. It identified it as Crofton Steers, who lives at address here. And should we send out a hit squad?
A hit squad.
Oh God! But it's not for killing. Their version of a hit squad is they come in and take photos of all your stuff anyways. They're like,
yeah. They're like, we're gonna street view your house. I'm like, oh.
So should we've been around the block on this a little bit, and
well, we've been live for an hour 18, I think.
Let's roll into verdicts, and we can.
You're ready for verdicts. You don't want to.
Yeah. I mean, look, I can keep talking about this, but it's an expanding conversation, and maybe we want to try to bring it back to Google, but it's hard not to include those other implications. Yeah. The broader
before the show stuff. When Mike, you were going on about social media, I was really like, I'm like, oh God, I'm going to be talking. It's going to be Google, and I just don't want to. I was very tentative in what I was saying because I knew we were going to talk about it.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh, this is very apropos. I've been thinking about this stuff a lot lately.
Yeah. Yes, I am good to go on verdicts. I could go potentially first.
Okay, well, let's bring in the jury.
Jury?
Or is it jury? What are we bringing in?
It is the farm animal.
The farm animal. I thought they were the jury.
Why do they call it like a judge?
Order in the court.
Order in the court, everyone. All right, we are now. Court is now in session for verdict time. Crofton, you wanted to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Google is one that, you know, I have struggled with, and I just wanted to say, like, it is responsible for some things that are borderline I find borderline magical throughout my life. Like when I first did Street View or whatever, and you're like walking down the street, I'm just like, this is insane. And I'm looking around and seeing these photos. You know, when the Google search came around, I was like, it's a search engine. It did what it did well, but it was a search engine, and I'd used them before, and it wasn't necessarily mind blowing. But since then, they've always pushed it forward. Like, say what you will about the Stadia video game thing that has been a bit of a whatever launch. You know, they're trying new things, and they're trying to do things that maybe other companies haven't. They seem to be always pushing that innovation angle, and I really respect that. Like, one time I had gotten my Oculus Rift headset, which, yes, I know was owned by Facebook or whatever, and one of the there wasn't much on it when I first got it, but there was Google Maps and Google Earth, and you could just get randomly dropped somewhere, and it was like Street View, and you're looking around, and you could go into museums that they've brought cameras in and done the inside of museums, and I'm walking around some random museum in some random city in Mexico, like in virtual reality, and I'm just like, this is insane. Like, it's crazy. You know, I'm in my basement right now, but I'm reading this plaque about some sort of dinosaur. And so all this to say, Google has delivered magic in the past, and it continues to deliver service products in the present that I use daily, from, you know, my internet to from my email to you know, their Office suite of packages like Microsoft's. Before it, they make everything a little punchier, a little faster, a little easier, and when they see something's really good, they buy it, like YouTube or whatever. And so, I mean, everything, like, I have a certain amount of trust in the quality of what I'm getting at pretty much zero cost, because they're making their money in more kind of sneaky, data-driven, advertised, focused ways. And that's the stuff that I'm uncomfortable with. And it's the stuff that's sort of been driving me more and more batty lately. And I think it reached the pitch where the Google algorithm was essentially, you know, writing my emails for me. And it was a bit, it remains a bit scary to me. Like that, it's one thing for it to fill in searches, and to sort of like tailor what I'm looking for. It's another thing to actually know so much about the way that I write, from, be it from the Gmail itself or from other programs, that it's able to self-generate and self-populate as you know, as AI advances. Like, they could have an AI Crofton, which sounds perhaps like the most awesome thing in the world, but also kind of scary. You know, like, I used to say I was irreplaceable, but if someone could replace me, it would be Google. And that is, you know, that is off-putting. I do think that, like, in terms of delivering a verdict on Google today in 2020, I'm at a point where I'm going to skew more positive than I think that I will in the future. I think that Google is going to turn slightly more heel in the next year, in the next few years. They're bothering me to the point that I switch web browsers, and we will see what continue, you know, how it continues. But looking at this moment in time where we are at now, and all that it's given me, and all the good, you know, all the neat tools and all of that, I am going to have to go and say that Google is good.
That's way more positive than I thought you were.
Yeah. I'm actually a little surprised. Wow.
No, I think I did a good job of explaining it right
I
there.
wasn't saying you. No, that wasn't the surprising part. Usually that is, but I thought your verdict was great. But I was surprised you went with good.
Deliver, yeah. You were like, they deliver magical.
The whole time I've been struggling with this. It's like, I've loved this company pretty much since I've gotten on board with them, and now I'm at a point where I'm like drifting away, and I'm concerned about a lot of things. But how concerned am I now? I think I'm going to be more concerned in the future. But for the moment, I still have to say that they're good. But I would easily, I would never argue with a bullshit call or even a bad call on them. I think it could go any way. So enjoy your verdicts.
Well, look, I'll go second and give Beau the final word, because you know, who knows what Beau's going to say. I think we all know what I'm going to say, though. But I struggle with this a little bit, too. Of the tech companies, which I have a big hate on for, Google's the one I like the most, or certainly the one I use the most. And I agree with Crofton. They have a lot of products that that are good. I mean, Google Street View is an amazing thing. I guess when I come down to I'm like trying to judge this company and be like, okay, it does some things which are like, so it does maps and things really well, does search really well. It's basically just improved stuff that already existed, though it was very clunky before the internet generally. Google's just, it's like you could find out information before. Like, I'm old enough that I remember looking in the library for a book and looking through it, and you're like, okay, yeah, that's not a fast way to get the information that you need, but it was, you could do it, so Google like does all these things, does them really well, but it's like, it hasn't solved any problems. Like, it wasn't like you had a problem of there was no way to get information before. What it's done is made it there is a now better and faster way to get information. It's like, okay, so that wasn't like a problem that needed to be solved. It's just they made it more efficient. Now that's kind of like, so is that good? I'm like, I don't know. It's convenient. And then you're like, so, but is it bad? Like, when I'm going through my head, where am I going to go with this? So it's like, I think they haven't fully solved a problem. They've just sort of found a way to do something easier. And on the negative end of it, I think we went through it a lot. I don't want to rehash all the negatives that are coming out of this, but I think like literally it is not an overstatement to say that the massive divisions that exist in the world that are growing can be laid at the feet of the Silicon Valley tech giants, like that they have caused this by doing things like, my Google search provides me with a probably more left-leaning view than does my right-wing uncle who searches something. He gets put more in his bubble. He thinks I'm more out to lunch if I'm more left. Like, this has happened on all these platforms, and Google is squarely to blame for a lot of it. And they're doing this just because they want to understand us better so that they can sell products better. Like, that's their end game, is to get money by selling ads. Like, that's what they're doing. Yes, they're providing products which are convenient and I enjoy, but do I need them? Is life terrible and unlivable without these products? It is not. I lived before Google and my life was not shit. And that's the kind of thing that's really worth remembering. My life before Google was good, and it was very good. And is it better after Google? I would say no, it's the same. If anything, I now have to think about my usage of technology because I understand that there's a manipulation factor going on. I didn't have to think about that stuff before. So for me, like, I was probably, and I like Google and I use a lot of this stuff, but I just think that the nefariousness of how they make money and the way they do it is now so clear and probably only getting worse, that I have to land fully on the bad. Google is bad.
Well, there you have it. The bad verdict. Oh man.
Yeah, not so surprising for me, but here we go.
Here's what's funny, neither of our verdicts should influence yours. You should be your own man.
I know. I'm gonna be my own man, Dad. But but Mike just made a great point. I'm gonna not respond, but just mention that last little bit of what you said. I thought. I mean, we all made good points, but just how he said how his life was different before all of this, and having to consider the manipulation factor is a very heavy tax on. I don't know how many people are self-aware analyzing this. I think a lot of people are mistrustful or hesitant, even if they are using it, but ignorant of how computers work. Certainly that's been my experience. Everything I use now comes with a sense of disease, like just. What are they tracking? Is this a good idea? Am I habit forming something? Like, it's not just Google. It's like everything I use, I'm like suspicious and paranoid of its impact on me as a human being, as well as whatever bullshit they're doing. It's kind of hit me like in the past like 3 months or 4 months that like I mistrust everything on a computer, everything. And it's like, but I really like using computers and I haven't stopped and I'm showing no signs of slowing, but like everything I mistrust, and I don't like feeling that way. Even though computers, like, the internet in 2020, computers, the services give me all the great things I already mentioned earlier in the show about I'm getting to live my dream in a way. It's in a small way, but in a way that I couldn't without the technology. No one would give a shit about me, honestly. I don't think I would make the kind of inroads without computers that I have with what I'm doing. That being said, you know, I am concerned with what they're doing, but it's so overwhelmingly a force that I'm not sure what to do. Like it seems like such a big decision to go, I'm going to live in a cottage, or I'm going to live away from the city where there are no cell phones and no cell service, and so no temptation to be a part of it and try to live a new life. And I've contemplated that over the past couple of months. I contemplated what that might be like, and is that a right choice, and should I cut my ties to all of this? And because I used to read a lot of books, and I used to like listening to music and playing and not thinking about computers in this way that we do now. And so, you know, it is a problem, and I feel kind of two ways about it right now. And because I'm not able to reconcile it, I think Crofton made great points also about how Google is awesome. They do awesome stuff, and I love when I love when anything innovates. I love cool new shit. Doesn't matter what it is. And if it takes money, and if they got to make money this way, maybe that's just the cost. So, and maybe it's not that bad of a thing for the sci-fi shit I said earlier in the show. I think you guys know where I'm headed. I think I now know where I'm headed. Google is bullshit. Can't quite give it good, but, you know, I can't quite say that, you know, I'm happy about things. And for that reason, that my inability to reconcile and come up with a polarized decision, as I often usually go good, means that the bullshit is the category.
Honestly, I think that might, like, I mean, whenever we have a full spread on a topic, it's generally pretty safe to argue that bullshit is the right verdict. But I do feel that it is one of those situations where you know, you could say I think if I had heard any of our 30 verdicts in a vacuum, I would agree with each one, and I'd be like, oh yeah, it is good. Oh yeah, it is bad. Oh, it is bullshit. And it's rare that it's rare that really resonates with me. But definitely, what you guys say are concerns that I totally
no,
have.
it's true. Like I don't really disagree with the things that you guys said, but that's how muddy it is right now. And listeners, if you want to help clear some of this mud by sending us an email about what we missed about Google, okay, you liked it, good.
I wasn't sure at first, but then as it went on, I was like, "Oh, this is really good." Okay,
send us an email. Tell us, you know, is Google a positive force in the world? Is it a negative force in the world? Or is it going to stay muddy, big pile of bullshit? We would like to hear from you. Write to us. Our email is goodbadbull@gmail.com. Hey, who owns Gmail? It's a mom and pop shop, right? Gmail, is that right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And you could also tweet us at goodbadbull and like us on Facebook. I feel super dirty after reading through that list right now after this conversation.
Yeah, plug all our socials. Go.
I know, and I'm like not on, well, two of them. But yeah, also, if you haven't subscribed to the show and are somehow a first-time listener, you know, go ahead and subscribe. Google Play or iTunes or Spotify, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts, you could find us. And all this information we found at our website, goodbadbull.com. And we do have a Patreon. People who support the show, we greatly appreciate it. It's patreon.com/goodbadbull. Every dollar helps keep it going, and we are very thankful for the people who choose to send a few bucks our way. We don't take it for granted, so thank you. And Beau, I know you got a lot of stuff going on, so
yeah. So I like to keep it quick. I got beauschwartz.com. You can find links to everything else from there. Planning on doing the third episode of the show that's also advertised, The Beau Show. Coming soon. I know people are interested to hear my thoughts about, you know, some of the personal things I'm going through, so it'll be on there, as well as a few other ideas that we're batting around between the three of us, just as a little teaser. Nothing concrete yet, but the other thing I wanted to mention too today is just because this is the first time we're also streaming, rather than our Good Bad Bull Twitch channel, we're streaming on my channel, and the conversation in there has been great. I just want to say hello, you guys, and if you are listening and want to participate in great side conversation, not live on the show, there are some great comments going on in there as well. So we might have to adjust our socials readout, because I think maybe we'll stream on here, because you know, it's fun to see your conversation. It helps, and it helps add to the debate. That's all I'll say.
No, well said. And yeah, it's great to see that there is a conversation going on there as well. And Crofton, if people want to see what you're up to, where can they do so?
They can follow me on Twitter at Crofton Steers. That's pretty much the best way to do it. I also do another show called Dungeons and Diapers. They can find that at tgistudios.com/DAD.
And of course, you can find me strolling around my neighborhood, enjoying the fresh air, hopefully having a conversation with a friendly neighbor.
Yeah.
Just Google where is Mike Hodgins in Ottawa?
Yeah, probably like
and it'll be like beep, beep, bloop, 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 and then just do like directions to there, Street View, you know, whatever. He's on Street View.
Oh yeah, he's on Street View. You should give out your Street View, Cork.
Yeah, they'll be like, I'll be walking through the park, and this little drone starts hovering near me with the Google insignia, and it's like I'm like, get away! It's gonna be like that thing with this. Like, get away from me, you stupid Google drone! It's like just streaming.
I can't wait till that, because then we can throw snowballs. Like, kids will throw snowballs at them, and that'll be a fun thing for kids to do.
It will be fun.
At least the one defense you have is that your name is not the only person in the world that has that name. Like, you're not like the only Mike Hodgins. There's another Michael Hodgins out there. If you search Google Michael Hodgins, I'm not guaranteed I will find you first. I know that if I search Crofton Steers, I will find me first. Yeah. And that I used to be proud of, but now I'm like, I don't like that.
And I also have the good fortune that the people who share my names are in almost all cases vastly more successful and accomplished than I am. Nice. So you're likely to find all of them much before me.
Hey, remember Google HoloLens? Whatever happened to that? Was it, or am I Google Glass? Sorry, that's it. Google Glass. Whatever happened to Google Glass?
People realized it was dumb.
Yeah, I think there were See, I think at the time, this shows how much we've changed. At the time, it was privacy concerns, because you can basically videotape people without their consent all the time. Probably a lot of this stuff, like reveal their locations, you know, like where someone works. Like, you go into a store with your Google Glass, you stream video from your glasses, which you can just do from your phone. So I don't know what the big fucking deal is, but you know, you can walk. But I think the thing is with a phone, at least you can kind of see. Maybe with the glasses, you're like, that's it.
Well, they could make it that it does a bright red light, like recording or something.
It is funny because, like, I forgot to mention this. I've mentioned it before on the show. I can't remember what the context was, but on my current street right now, like, my house is, I've done a lot of renovations on this house over the years. It looks nothing like it did when I bought it, but on Google Street View, it looks the same as it did like about 10 or 15 years ago. And
they're better get on that, Google.
No, they won't, because and I find this really interesting. 2 doors down from me is someone who has a hate on for Google. Mm-hmm. And if you go on Street View, their house is completely blurred out. And then so when you come down the street, it's like a modern up-to-date shot, and you get to within 5 houses of their house, and you're clearly going back to when the cameras were not as good quality. It's like about 10 years earlier. And then you go back until about 5 houses on the other side of them, and then it's up-to-date images again. So that person clearly had said, you know, and this is kind of interesting, had said to Google, like, get my fucking house off there. You do not have permission to do this. And they did it. And then it makes you wonder again a little bit, like, yeah, Google's doing all this stuff. And you're like, do they have permission to do that? You know, like, does someone have to ask permission if they take a picture of your house and publish it? And it's like, it's like, I don't know the answer to that question. But clearly you can tell them, take my house off your thing, and they will do it. And I mean, they blur everyone's faces too, because, you know, you've not given consent. But for all the spaces that might be private that you own, they're just on there. You know, you didn't. I never said put my. Yeah.
I hope you're allowed, because otherwise, all that bush photography I do outside Beau's house is for nothing.
For nothing, and it all goes straight online.
Straight on my new Twitch stream. See what Beau's doing live.
24 hours a day.
You know what? End the show, Beau.
Oh,